These are environmental health disorders because we changed our environment.
Right.
We lost our ground.
That's the number one killer of humanity right now is inflammation.
Most all life came out of the earth.
Our cultures around the world who are much closer to the earth.
I wanted nothing to do with a business. I was pretty much retired. I wanted to do the research and putting together a body of evidence to help people understand what this was. Everything is electrical. And how they pronounce you dead? The electrical stops. Then you are dead.
I'd like to welcome back to the show, returning champion, Clint Ober. How you doing, Clint?
Good, Alex. Thanks for having me back on. And it's a real opportunity. I really appreciate being able to come back and visit.
Oh, of course, Clint. Well, first of all, I appreciate you coming down to Austin. It's a little bit chillier than we're used to here now, currently, as we're recording this.
This is a record-breaking...
Yeah, it's pretty... the world's changing.
You not heat wave, the opposite.
Yeah, cold wave.
Frigid.
Yeah. Arctic blast, as they say.
Arctic blast, that's what it is.
But I appreciate you coming on, and I'm such a fan of what you do and the work that you're doing in the earthing movement, which you basically started.
Yep.
And we're here to talk about your books, The Mother Earth Effect, and of course, the classic Earthing, the most important health discovery ever.
Right.
And from someone who has started earthing after being introduced to you a while ago, it is pretty remarkable what it does health-wise and how you feel and all the things it does. We're going to get into that. But for people who don't know a little bit about you, how did you discover this concept of grounding and earthing?
Well, that's a long story.
Well, we'll make a truncated version because we have the other episodes that can go deeper into it.
Yeah. Basically, I grew up in nature. First of all, spent a lot of time raising animals and crops, and so I'm very organic, very just a nature boy,
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always had that connection with nature. And when I left that environment and I went to to work in the big world, I fell in love with television because I was born in 1944. There wasn't, all we had was radio. Saturday night listening to the radio, which is very interesting. But anyhow, so television came along in the 50s, about that era. And I remember that everybody just came and my school friends, everybody would come over and they would just get glued to this thing. But once I understood, I grew up with television. I grew up with that world. And so I saw everything and as it manifests. But you have this appetite for more. Mm-hmm. So I fell in love with the concept of cable television back in those days because we had one channel maybe in rural Montana, mm-hmm. in those areas. And so you had to go sometimes put a mountain, antenna up on a mountain, and then you'd run twin lead down the mountain, and then you'd point antennas at it, and you mm-hmm. get a fuzzy signal. But I fell in love with that concept of, and then adding channels and bringing in channels in that day from Helena or Great Falls or Missoula or somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then so everybody could have more to see or more. But the magic that I saw in it was that it was the world was bigger than Billings, Montana, where I grew up. Mm-hmm. It was, and when you saw even just the news from Helena or whatever, the world became smaller. And you felt more a part of it. And then when we were able to bring WGN from Denver or WTBS from Atlanta or whatever, mm-hmm. The world just dramatically changed. And then satellites, when we learned that satellites were stationary, mm-hmm. and we could bounce TV signals off of them. It's like I knew one day that with that technology that everybody in the world would have access to all the information at the same time. And then you would have it was a mission, became a mission at that point, was to, and we saw cable as having hundreds of channels and whatever, and we saw them being more what you see today in like narrowcasting, but we saw that everybody could have a channel, every interest, and really an advancement for the world until corporate America understood the power of advertising. Then they came and took over the whole industry later. But anyhow, so I fell in love with that, and so my background is in that field. But what we learned early on is everything had to be grounded to the earth. That's not a friendly term. It's not a term that most people had ever really paid attention to or understood. But we had to ground the cables in the air on the power lines or the poles. We had to ground everything to the earth in case there was static electricity building up on the lines or atmospheric charges or lightning, especially because the lightning would travel down the lines, and if you have cable going into the house, you could go into the house and blow up a TV set, start a fire. It was about fire, preventing fire. And also preventing interference with the coaxial type cables and so on. So, but anyhow, so grounding was in the mix of everything I was involved in, but it was kind of like breathing. It was base. You had to shield everything, protect everything, prevent interference, and as time went on, I just took it for granted. I thought everybody knew about grounding.
Sure.
And so what happened is in the 1960s, we invented shoes, or the synthetic sole shoes that insulate us from the earth. And, after I retired from the communications industry, cable industry, spent 30 years there, but I retired when I was about 50. And I just got bored because corporate America come in, took everything over. But I just one day intuitively asked, there's a whole story goes with all of this, that is there a consequence to humans no longer being naturally grounded? Most people would not even know what the term grounded means, other than an electrical people. It's called earthing technically. You put a ground rod in the earth, you connect anything in the environment that's electrical, you connect to it in order to prevent damage from lightning or electrical events or all kinds of electrical issues. So, but anyhow, it was second nature, and we developed a lot of it in the early cable industry because we didn't have computers. You didn't need grounding back in the old days.
Right.
There was not even grounding on the old homes built before 1960, And so, but anyhow, so it was just, it evolved, and then I kind of eventually retired, I guess, and evolved. So I just accidentally asked the question, I accidentally grounded myself one day on doing something that I wasn't thinking about, but I noticed the pain went away. Chronic pain in my body went away whenever I would ground myself to the earth. And I didn't understand it. But anyhow, it set me off on this mission. So it's just a series of events that happened. I have no idea where they came from, how I ended up there, because I was a totally different person, and then all of a sudden this question, I wonder if there's a consequence to humans no longer being naturally grounded. Nobody would ask that question unless they were born in the 40s.
Right.
Because back then therefore you couldn't get off the earth. You couldn't get ungrounded. Right. It was literally impossible.
And they were happier and healthier.
And they were much happier and healthier.
The thing that's fascinating too is as I've gotten deeper down the grounding or the earthing idea, is one thing that you've said before is that there is no natural cancer or diseases in that sense for animals, because they're constantly grounded. You never heard of And unless it's something environmental, unless it's something that they're in some sewage or something that we did to them. But if they're in a normal, naturally well-balanced ecosystem, animals don't get those kind of diseases in nature. They do, house pets do, because they're not grounded. Is that correct?
In nature, in the natural world, cancer does not exist.
Right. It's not a thing.
Inflammation does not exist.
Right.
And to put that in perspective so we can relate to it, animals who live outdoors in the wild, in nature, they do not manifest any of these modern health disorders, cardiovascular disease, cancer, lupus, MS, autism, you name it. They don't manifest any of them. On the other hand, animals who live indoors with their owners, 50% of them die from cancer, same rate as their owners. And cancer does not exist in the natural world. It has to do with our immune system over the years as we evolved and as we ended up who we are. If inflammation were to manifest in the population like it does today, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Because everybody today is sick. Everybody's suffering from an inflammation-related health disorder.
That's the number one killer of humanity right now is inflammation.
Yeah, and that term didn't enter the
Lexicon.
Until 204.
Yeah, exactly.
20 years ago.
That's crazy, but it's so true. Inflammation is the number one cause of all of the diseases that are killing human beings around the planet. So let's get into the science a little bit, because right now this sounds very pagan, earthy.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Like, let's put some crystals on the ground, let's sage the room kind of energy. But there is hard science to this. So can you talk about that a little bit?
First of all, it sounded absurd.
Right.
That you could take your bare feet off, stand on the earth, and the inflammation in your body would pretty much disappear. I mean, and when I say inflammation is the hot burning pain that you get when you have an injury or like when you have a chronic health disorder.
Sure.
It's a degenerative type thing. And but you have two pains. If you get hurt, one pain is, you back off or whatever. But if you're ungrounded, then you have a secondary pain that's called inflammation. That's where the body is producing. Well, if you give you an example, like if you have an injury or you have a health challenge coming, like your immune, it's all about the immune system.
But when you so like basically for people to understand, let's say you twist your ankle or you break your ankle, inflammation is brought in to protect the.
That's called an oxidative burst. That's not inflammation.
That's not inflammation. It's like you have to bring the swelling down.
Yeah, an oxidative burst is if you have an injury or there's damaged tissue, then the
blood rushes.
The white blood cells, or like a neutrophil, will come over, or the immune system knows how to signal them, and they'll come over and they'll surround an area where the damage has occurred, and they'll release what you call reactive oxygen species, and they will reduce cells that are damaged, unrepairable, or repair other whatever. But anyhow, in that process, that's where it all begins. And in nature, when you're standing barefoot on the earth, your body absorbs what we call negative charge, or the earth is, I hate to get
Go for it.
Lost out here, but the earth is negative, meaning it has an electrical surface charge.
It's a negative charge, essentially.
It's a negative charge.
Like on a battery, like a plus and a minus, right?
But think of no charge. There's no charge as negative. And so anyhow, when you're in contact with the earth, like the animals who live in the wild, or like if you're outdoors barefoot.
Surfers. On the beach
surfers,
constantly.
all the people who live close to the ocean, spend time in the ocean, there forever.
That's grounded. That's
They're
essentially
very,
grounded.
very well grounded.
Yeah.
But anyhow, when you have a injury, then what happens is the immune system senses it and sends what we call neutrophils to the area, white blood cells, and these neutrophils they release what you call reactive oxygen species. The word reactive, which was the word that really put the magic in what I was doing in the early days, reactive to me is an electrical term. because it has enough charge that it can strip an electron. It can take chrome off a bumper. It can do whatever. So anyhow, when you are naturally grounded, your body is flooded with these free electrons. You're at the same electrical potential as the Earth. What that means is you have pro rata a similar amount of electrons in your body as the Earth, and you and the Earth electrically are one. It's invisible, but you are one. And so that's in nature, and that's our animals who live in nature. And then, but we started wearing shoes in 1960. We introduced those into the environment.
The rubber soles.
The rubber soles, the synthetic soles, the Nike type, synthetic type, athletic type shoes. They came in as an athletic, a sports shoe. Before then we had tennis. They were kind of rubber. But anyhow, the advent of the synthetic sole shoes, so when we put them on, we lost our ground. We lost our contact with the electrical surface charge of the Earth, and we're no longer grounded. We lost our ground. And this ground, what it does, when these neutrophils are released and they go and oxidize pathogens, and they do that by ripping electrons. They release, this reactive oxygen, and it is electrically charged sufficient to pull an electron away from the pathogen structure.
Interesting.
And destroy it. That's how the immune system destroys pathogens or damaged cells. It oxidizes them. It burns them up. And that's all normal. And it happens every time, even when you breathe some, certain air or whatever, there'll be pathogens. But your immune system is there working all the time, constantly, keeping you safe and healthy and alive. The problem is, in this process of releasing these radicals, when you're grounded to the Earth, these are positive charges. When you're grounded to the Earth is, let's say, has negative charges. So when your body is grounded and connected to the Earth, then this charge, your body absorbs it. You are one with the Earth, equal, you are grounded, just like when you ground a refrigerator or anything else. So you're grounded, and what that means is your body now is, or your refrigerator, whatever, it's totally encased in this electrical shield and that absorbs charge. So these neutrophils, when they release these radicals, they are electrically hot. And once they destroy the pathogen and it's gone, if there's any residual reactive oxygen species remaining and you're ungrounded, then, normally Earth's free electrons would be forever present in your body and absorb and mop up and clean up these reactive oxygen after the oxidative burst. After they've done their job, if there's any remaining, they get mopped up and they're not a problem. If you are ungrounded and you have a shortage of free electrons or a shortage of, if you're not grounded, then these free electrons, or these remaining radicals,
do with the thing.
They have to neutralize because they're electrically charged. So they're looking for something to ground themselves. Once the immune system responds and releases the oxygen, the oxidative burst, then any radicals that are left over, any of those radicals that are left over, they're going to be neutralized in nanoseconds.
Interesting.
And they're going to look for anything in the immediate area, and they're going to attack it and oxidize it. That's what's called autoimmune disease, autoimmune disorder, autoimmune loop. The immune system is doing what it automatically does. It automatically is producing reactive oxygen. It's cleaning up the debris or the damage or the pathogens or whatever. And then it usually unwinds, but it unwinds when you're connected to the Earth because the Earth is electrical, the immune system is electrical. Everything is electrical first. You are an electrical being first, chemical second. If you don't have ground and you've lost your ground, you put shoes on and you are not grounded anymore, so you lose your electrons, your negative charge, and now these radicals are looking to ground, and so they'll steal an electron from an adjacent cell to the area and then damage it. Sends out another message back to the immune system. Mm-hmm. Immune system produces another reactive oxygen species, another, and then they repeat the process. Mm-hmm. So it's an ongoing. So that's why it's called inflammation, because these radicals they're starting a fire. They're oxidizing. The word oxidizing means to burn. Like when you light a match, stick it to a piece of wood, it's going to oxidize that wood.
And the electrons that are coming from the earth counterbalance that?
Yeah.
So
in the body, yes.
In the body. So you have two movies, one called The Earthing Movie and one called Down to Earth, a little short. Both are on Next Level Soul TV as of this recording. Cool. In those movies, I forgot which one, there's actual scans of a body that before grounding and after grounding on a I don't know if it was
thermal imaging.
Yeah, thermal imaging, exactly.
Yes.
So you could actually see the inflammation in the body and then how it actually dropped.
Yes.
How fast was that when it drops?
Well, it's electrical is
pretty fast.
It's kind of like speed of light stuff, you know.
It starts to work pretty quickly.
You flip the light switch and you have...
It's not a conversation of how long it took.
No. And so when you touch the earth, first of all, you have... And I hate to get too technical, but
sure.
But I think it's worth it. On the surface of the earth is this layer of... and again, visualize this. You know, it's like there's a layer of electrons. Mm-hmm. And nobody's ever really seen these things because they're small, but we know they're there because of the way they can be measured. And but anyhow, so there's kind of like a lattice. I mean, it goes around the world. Mm-hmm. Everything is covered with this layer of free electrons. Mm-hmm. It has to do with the sun. It has to do with
the core, all that stuff,
everything, and the core of the earth, and all of this motion and everything. So, but anyhow, so there's this layer on the surface of the earth everywhere, and most all life came out of the earth.
Yes, all life actually.
Yes.
It comes out of the earth, all of it, unless there's an alien that dropped in. I'm not sure.
Exactly. But all life on this planet came into being in a grounded state.
Yes.
Whether it's, it's the first
plants,
amoeba, the fish, the whatever, it all maintained its natural connection with the earth. As long as you are grounded to the earth, we know that inflammation, chronic inflammation in a human body cannot exist. Mm-hmm. If you get grounded and stay grounded, take your shoes off, get back in the mud, then you're going to be just like the animals who live outdoors. They do not manifest inflammation. Now, 80 to 100% of most diseases today, if you'll take that disease, like diabetes or like whatever it is, type it into Google or AI chat, whatever, and then type in the word inflammation at the same time, your disease and inflammation, you'll see 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 studies that are all related. These diseases are all manifest because you're no longer grounded. You have, there's a lot more to it than that, but one of the, you don't have the ground that puts out the fire, that prevents the fire. That's why we ground a refrigerator or a computer or anything else, to prevent, so it'll be electrically stable and shielded so that noise and stuff can't interfere with the process, because everything in the body is electrical. Anything electrical out there is going to perturb charge in the body. And so it just goes on and on and on, and I could go down this rabbit hole a long ways, but I have to be careful.
So let me ask you, Clint, though, the grounding aspect, can it help with other ailments like anxiety or stress? Is that also part of inflammation as well, or not being? Because all I can tell you is this: when I go to the beach and I'm on the sand and I'm in the water, like let's say in a Caribbean vacation or something like that, the energy that you feel when you're on the ocean or near the ocean or in the sand, you feel so relaxed, you feel so chilled. And I know there's some ions that are coming off the ocean and things, But is that also like if people are super stressed, people are super anxious, does grounding help that?
First of all, over the last 25 years, with this earthing and how it all evolved, women are the ones who primarily respond to, who recognize it and identify with it and say, oh my goodness, this makes sense. And then they'll take their shoes off, spend a little time outdoors and say, oh my gosh, this works.
Anyone who's married understands that women are much smarter than men.
Of course. Of course. Usually tell a little story because I'm speaking to women mostly. And but I tell a story that when I was young, I was a cowboy. I mean, that's a boy who sits on a horse and babysits cows, make sure there's water's okay, make sure there's not any noxious weeds growing in the pasture or whatever. But just a cowboy, a boy who sits on a horse and plays with cows. But not like the movies at all.
It's not like Yellowstone?
No, it's not quite like Yellowstone. But it was fun. It's a good life because you're living in nature and
all the time.
You're living with the heartbeat of nature. You see it all around you constantly, all the time, and you're connected to it. And but anyhow, sometimes when you're playing cowboy out there on the horse, babysitting some cows, some years, you have drought and whatever, and you have no grass. You have, it's at least 10,000 acres from the Native Americans or whatever, just so you can feed a handful of cows. And but anyhow, some years it rains, and it rains and it rains, and then you have lots of grass.
Right.
And the next year, all of a sudden, you have jackrabbits. And all of a sudden you have an explosion. They can have like a dozen per litter, and they can have like a half a dozen litters a year. So each jackrabbit can produce like 100 babies. And so anyhow, this is normal phenomena. You have good grass, so now you get lots of food, so the jackrabbits, they flourish, and they're everywhere. And then soon after, you start seeing an abundance of coyotes.
Of course.
The coyotes eat jackrabbits eat the grass, so it's just a
circle of life.
Circle of life. And so anyhow, the reason that I like to tell this story, because I like to relate it to how, women and women's lives. As a jackrabbit is just going to sit there eating and all day long, that's all they do is eat and whatever.
And produce.
And produce. And then here comes the coyote. It sneaks up on them, and as soon as it gets within a certain distance, the jackrabbit's ears will go up like this, and then all of a sudden they'll heighten their awareness. And then as soon as the coyote jumps, the jackrabbit will spring into the air, and it will... and I was younger then, so my distance is maybe not be right. But anyhow, so it'll spring into the air, and then it'll zigzag back and forth across the pasture. And the coyote, will more like a dog, it'll just run straight after it. But the coyote will soon run out of energy, and he'll just lay down and sit in there panting. And the jack will just run just a little bit further, but it'll keep one eye on the coyote. And then as soon as the coyote gets up and wanders off, then the jackrabbit will kind of have a visceral shake and what I call ground out the stress of the chase. And then it'll go back to eating like nothing ever happened.
Right. He's not holding on to like, oh my God, I almost died.
Yeah.
Like we do.
So this is your fight or flight system.
Sure.
And today we live indoors. A typical woman gets up in the morning, has kids, get the kids ready to go to school, whatever, and they're constantly creating charge or cortisol spikes, little fight or flight, miniature fight or flight. And it's called chronically elevated sympathetic response. But anyhow, so anyhow, they're sitting, and so every time something goes on, and then if they're married and have a husband, so there's all this action going on in the morning, and so they're constantly being charged with cortisol. The fight or flight is releasing cortisol. That's what happened to the rabbit. Give him the energy. It was a big burst of cortisol. So here's a woman indoors, and it's everybody, but I'm just using this as an example, indoors, and all of this life activity going on, getting the kids off to school, everything, it's all producing miniature spikes of cortisol. So as the day goes on, and then she has to eventually get ready for herself, go to work, whatever, drive to work, and she's ungrounded all the time, in the car, wearing shoes, and in an office or in a building or whatever. Today they work at home, they're still on carpet, indoors, whatever, but they never touched the dirt, never touched the earth. And so this cortisol, the rabbit, he grounds it out. But a woman sits there and becomes charged with cortisol, flooded. Her body becomes flooded with cortisol. That creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of irritability. And that goes on, then it turns to all, life, the stress of life. And then it goes on too long, then it turns into fibromyalgia, then it turns into MS or lupus, et cetera, cancer, you name it. There's a list of 100 of them, of named versions. There's only one disease, according to the original researchers. It's the immune system disorder. Dysfunctioning immune system. And we put different labels on all of it because different people, based on their genetics and lifestyle, they'll manifest, some will manifest this or that and whatever. But anyhow, the point of this story is that what I try to leave women with especially is you have no option. At the end of the chase, you've got to go outdoors. You've got to go out in the backyard. You've got to take your shoes off. You've got to find a place where you can sit and put your bare feet on the earth and drain the coyote juice. Because if you don't, it will eat you up.
That makes sense.
It will manifest as an autoimmune-related health disorder. And it'll be tagged under the name inflammation. But all of these, it doesn't matter. Cancer is an inflammation-related health disorder because it doesn't exist in nature. So these are artificial diseases. These are environmental health disorders because we changed our environment.
Right.
We lost our ground.
Basically.
I'm sorry. Did I say I did?
No,
I get
that
too
was
far
a beautiful.
off?
No, that was a beautiful explanation of that answer to that question. What are the most common misconceptions about grounding that you've come across?
Well, most of all, they've never heard of it.
There's that.
And when I'm going to take my shoes off, I'm going to stand barefoot on the earth, I'll get my feet dirty. I'm not going to do that.
Right. Because we've been trained. We've been programmed.
Yeah, we've been programmed. We are all trained just like our pets and just like everything else. We are.
But the thing
we're
is,
trained in this.
But the thing is, Clint, though, there are cultures around the world who are much closer to the earth, especially indigenous peoples are definitely much more connected to the earth.
Right.
But the richer the country, the more disconnected from nature we get sometimes.
Well, that's what we did. We didn't recognize it because it happened gradually.
Of course. It's the frog in the boiling water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's first of all, television. As soon as before television, you couldn't get us in the house.
Right. Oh, I know.
We'd rather sleep in the barn. We'd rather do anything. Go build a cave down by the creek, anything, but we wouldn't go in the house. There's nothing to do in a house.
Until television, and then let's not even get into video games.
Right. But back then we had none of this.
Of course.
But in my lifetime, I've seen, we had radio, and I remember when we got telephone, and then when television came along, there was a big shift because all of a sudden we had to go be indoors to watch a show or a program show
at that time,
or the news or whatever. And so all of a sudden we moved indoors and we were insulated from the earth. I mean, we were not grounded, let's put it that way. We weren't in contact with the earth like we were all the time before, for at least a large portion of the day. And we had leather-soled shoes, which are semi-conductive. And so
Not very comfortable, but yes.
yeah, and you just didn't have any of these. You had infectious diseases; they were
Different.
really, really challenging. But the
Chronic stuff.
the chronic inflammation, degenerative health disorders like everybody is living with today, they did not exist. So anyhow, we changed our environment. We slowly moved off the earth and we went indoors. We eventually invented plastics. We put them on carpets, those old green and shag carpets and stuff. And so then all homes became carpeted. Then, it just goes on. The shoes, and then shoes, you wouldn't dare go outdoors without shoes. Now, everybody could afford them. Shoes were a great invention. I mean, rubber-soled synthetic shoes, because now everybody could afford them, and everybody could wear them, and you didn't have to worry about them getting wet and getting ruined, and all these things. But anyhow, so we shifted. Accidentally, we started shifting our environment with the advent of television. And so, I look at my history in that industry, and so this is all this 30 years in ground, or 25 years in ground. It's my penance for
degrounding people.
Yeah, but anyhow, so undoing what I helped create there. But anyhow, so then all of a sudden one day we totally lost. We have no contact with the earth. Our children, we're not going to let them go outdoors and stand in a puddle and jump up and down. Everything shifted. So we changed our environment. So all of these modern health disorders are environmental health disorders. They're not related
to genetics or anything.
Yeah, they're not related to genetics, because my grandmother, my 1,000 grandmothers back, I have the same genes. I am her up walking, I'm a continuation. And that immune system that got all of my progenitors here and everyone else's, they survived all of this. The immune system adapted to all of this, and we had health. Now, infectious disease is a different issue, but I'm talking about degenerative, environmental.
Chronic, yeah.
Yeah, chronic. And so anyhow, that's... So we were all suffering from environmental health disorders.
So there's a story at the beginning, you wrote the foreword to this book, Mother Earth Effect. There's a story that you don't share very often. What is that story of? I'd like to hear some real world stories that you've come across of the power of earthing and grounding and what it's done for people's lives.
I think it all started in 1980. I was with a bunch of trainers, people that I owned a corporation, and I used to hire a lot of trainers. They would come and, energize the corporate staff or whatever and so on. But I got to know these people, and I fell in love with that concept. And so one time they invited me to come to one of their events down in Carlsbad, California. And I was there, and in fact, Louise Hay was there with me at that show, and a few others. I don't remember their names, but they were of that group, and we were doing some breath work, and I didn't know much about any of this stuff. I wasn't a hippie or anything. I mean, I grew up in Native American, so we were hippies before hippies knew what a hippie was.
Fair enough,
But anyhow, so, and that's another part of my background. I had this earthy Native American cultural stuff around me all the time, and that was the only thing I could identify with when I was young, because it felt real. But there's a lot more to that story. But anyhow, it's nature. It's that organic.
Connecting, sure.
Yeah, very connected to the planet. Indians were still living in teepees when I was a kid. And when the government came in and built them houses, they eventually put the horses in the house and let them use the bathtub or whatever, and went back to their teepee. I mean, you can't just come in with the government and change color. But don't go there, Clint.
Yeah.
I was at this event, and when you're around this group of people, they're kind of what you call New Age or.
New Age is the right word.
Yeah, they're more into breaking out of convention.
Sure.
And I was all ears because wow, this is stuff I had not known a lot about, but I connected. But it was I identified with it through the Native American because what they were teaching was a similar thing. And this is years before these people were born, some of them. And so anyhow, I had gone through all their little programs and their sessions and had the fun and whatever. And anyhow, they were doing this one blocks game and different old language here, but so we were doing this what they call a breathwork session, where there was a connected breathing, and what it did is a good way to meditate and get out of a state for sure. But I went into this kind of meditation type thing, and then all of a sudden I had this. I always call them the blue people. I don't know who they are.
Okay.
But
had an experience.
Yes, I had an experience, but it wasn't. It went on for many, many years. But anyhow, what I experienced was, or what I had a kind of a dream, and these people started showing up, and they were, I think there's like half a dozen of them. And I remember I can identify some of them now. I couldn't then. But anyhow, they would come and stand in front of me, just like we're sitting here right now, and they would come from over there and stand in front of me. And they didn't say a word.
Okay.
And they would just look at me like my father or my grandfather looking at me, and I knew what to do, expecting me to go get it done, but to do something, and then that one would move away, and another one would come up, and each of them would come up one at a time, and I don't remember after the third or fourth one anymore. But anyhow, I thought this was so strange because they didn't say anything, and they were more like I would imagine a ghost to be or something like that, and more ethereal type. And I thought, this is really, really strange. And it really, I had nothing to reference to, nothing to say, wow, this is that or whatever. And except for the Native Americans, they always had visions or experiences or whatever you want to call it. And I always thought that Native Americans, here's the earth and here's above, and they live somewhere in the middle. I mean, they're kind of a mystical people by nature. They're not, they think.
The blue people that you're talking about.
No, the Native Americans.
The Native Americans, okay, got it.
Yeah, the Native Americans. So I had this context of the Native Americans, but these were not Native Americans. These were a different type of people. And a couple of them could have been, I don't know. But anyhow, so I logged that, and I didn't think too much about it. And then about a month or so went by, maybe a little more, and I had more of an experience where one night a woman, what I thought was a female, was standing in the room, and again, this same ethereal blue whatever. And I thought, well, I mean, first of all, it kind of shocked me. And again, same thing. Looked at me and expecting me to do something. I could feel it, but there were no words. Expecting me to do something. And like she was waiting. And then maybe a year went by. I don't remember the dates here because this is back in the 90s, 80s, late in the 80s, 90s, somewhere in there. And so anyhow, then this dream type kept reappearing. It was like a reoccurring dream. But I noticed that the person was a little different each time. So it was like a different person. But again, it was no dialogue. There was nothing other than a feeling, like somebody was waiting on me and there was some urgency into doing something. And I had no idea other than I could just remember my grandfather looking at me sometimes and saying, not have to say a word, but I knew what he meant.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyhow, then I had retired from the television communications industry. And I was intuitively, and I was looking at a group of tourists get off of a bus, and they were wearing like the white Nike type tennis shoe, and they were all looking kind of uniform. And intuitively, I asked myself, I wonder if there's a consequence to us humans no longer being naturally grounded because of these shoes. I had always worn leather cowboy boots. That's just who I was. My feet would sweat in the tennis type shoes. And so I always liked that breathing leather. And so anyhow, that's when I started the earthing. This will all make sense in a minute.
Sure.
So I started the, asking questions, and I went home that night, and I had fixed an electrical problem with the computer that afternoon and got to thinking about grounding, and I went home that night. I was retired pretty much then. And so I went home that night and grabbed a voltmeter, and I started testing my body against the earth. And I started walking around my house on the carpets and everything and with the shoes on. And then I noticed all of these electrical charges, static electricity, sometimes thousands of volts of static, just getting off the couch, or you're sitting on the bed and you get up and there's all these static charges from the foam and the fabrics of the blankets. And so we're living in a sea of electrical charges. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I didn't think too much about it. But all of a sudden I had this notion that I needed, because when I would stand barefoot on the earth, meter would go to zero. And this is static charges. And also with the electric fields, the environmental electric fields. But anyhow, they would all go to zero as soon as I grounded myself. And so that was like an aha moment. Okay, how come I spent 30 years in the industry and helped develop this grounding concept, and I never knew that my body was being charged by all of these electrical charges. And so that night before I went to the hardware store and I bought a roll of 3-inch wide metal aluminum duct tape, heating duct tape, but it was aluminum, so metal. And I laid it across my bed, and I connected it to a wire, threw it out the window, connected it to the ground, to the earth, and then I would measure myself when I was grounded versus not. And the meter would go do whatever it was, or the meters I had, and so. At 52, something like that, been retired for a couple of years, and a lot more to the story, but I'm just surfacing here. But I lay down on the blanket or on the bed with my back against the tape, and then I would touch the voltmeter and go to zero. Well, at that age, I had led a pretty rough life, active, meaning I skied for 30 years. I've done everything. Grew up on a cowboy. Rode the rodeo circuit on the weekends just for fun because there wasn't anything else to do. Woke up the next morning. The meter was right here beside me. But normally I couldn't sleep because I had too much pain. I had to take Advil, and I'd had back surgery. I had everything you can imagine. And so I just had a pretty rough life. The typical 50-year-old, you hit a wall. Like, what happened?
Oh, I know.
What happened?
I said, why is it 50? Clint.
Yeah.
Why did it happen at 50? 49, I was solid.
Exactly.
But the second I hit 50, everything just, the wheels fell off the damn truck.
No, it's crazy.
Isn't it insane?
Yeah. But anyhow, so I woke up that next morning and I thought, what in the world is going on here? Because I don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
I had to have a TV on. I had to have noise. I had,
And now you were solid.
Yeah. And so anyhow, I just said, wow, there's something really going on here, something significant. And I thought it was, first of all, the electric fields, and all these static charges that are on my body and just living in a sea of this. And so, but when you're grounded, it disappears because you're part of the earth. The earth is infinitely large. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah,
and
compared
you're
to us, of
infinitely
course,
small, so you're going to equalize and be a part of the earth, not the environment.
Right.
And so anyhow, I thought, I got up and I just kind of stuttered. I said, how come I don't know about this? I'm a smart guy. I spent 30 years in the communications industry where everything has to be grounded and protected and shielded. And then I just kept playing with it for a couple of days. And then and because I slept so well, I had a couple of buddies there. And I said, you guys got to try this because nobody sleeps. Mm-hmm. Nobody sleeps in the United States. And probably nowhere. But anyhow, not like we used to. Mm-hmm. We used to go to bed and we would boom, and then we'd get up in the morning and go again. But anyhow, I grounded these other two guys about my age, and I said, you got to try this. I know you're going to think I'm nuts, but you got to try this. So I took some metal duct tape over their houses, put it on the bed. One of the wives got really upset with me. But anyhow, we grounded them, and sure enough, they both slept better. But about 3 or 4 days later, one of them said to me, he said, do you think this could be having any effect on my arthritis? Because he had severe arthritis. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think it just helps you sleep better. Then all of a sudden, I realized that all of my chronic pain
was
gone. And I thought, what is this? Is it real? I mean, is it whatever? And anyhow, so along the way, during this little project here, I kept having this recurring dreams
with the blue people,
with what I call the blue people.
What we call the Avatar, the Na'vi, essentially.
Whatever.
Yes.
And I knew nothing about any of this.
Of course.
So this was just like,
it's pre-Avatar. This is all pre-Avatar.
It was just whatever it was.
Sure.
And at that time, and but it was always a woman.
Okay.
Coming to me, and then now they were more like face to face.
With you.
With me, and I could start reading the expressions in the face. Mm-hmm. And the expression was always kind of like there was some urgency or they were waiting for something. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to make any sense out of it. And then sometimes a year would go by, which is what happened here. And so then, and I probably had a dozen of these dreams at different times. And they were always spread out. And I couldn't make any sense of it, and almost wanted to dismiss it and just because it was something, Mm-hmm. And then, so then I went back and then I said, okay, I've got to figure this, why touching the earth or being grounded to the earth reduces arthritic pain, and it helps you improve your sleep, and it gets rid of these pain in the body. Mm-hmm. Now back then, this was in 95, whenever, somewhere back in there, the word inflammation didn't come along until 2004.
Right.
9 years later. Mm-hmm. So, but we learned eventually that you can't have pain unless you have inflammation first, oxidation of tissue.
Makes sense.
Then you get pain, and pain is a manifestation telling you, hey,
there's something wrong.
Something's
right.
wrong. Get me out of here. So I went to UCLA. I went
everywhere.
University of Arizona. I went everywhere trying to get somebody to help me with this. Most people just laughed me off like, are you
crazy.
nuts?
Yeah.
You expect us to believe somebody's going to put a nail in the ground, tie a wire to it, and tie it around somebody's toe, and they're going to sleep better. Those are the exact words.
I mean, and when you say it like that, it makes sense that they would treat you this way, Clint.
Yeah. But I understood very early on, they knew nothing about electrical.
Yes.
They had no idea their bodies were electrical. They had no idea that ground, earth, everything was electrical. Everything was chemical. Everything was alchemy and like it is today. Everything is a pill for every ill, And but the body is not that way. It's electrical. It's an electrical piece of equipment. It's the most electrical thing in the environment. There's nothing more electrical than a human body. Every single cell in the body is electrical. Every single cell, all the cells communicate with each other, as organs, brain, everything, heart, everything is electrical. And how they pronounce you dead? The electrical stops. Then you are dead.
Yeah, there's no more current in you.
No more current, no more energy. Energy being the magic word. Did my first study in Ventura, California. Took 60 people. I had some people down at UCLA help me pull together how to design a study and do it. And took 30 people and put them on, made these little ground planes, which was just a mat that was maybe 24, 30 inches long by 12 inches wide, a piece of felt that I had bonded some conductive material to, ESD, electrostatic discharge type material. And then I connected them to a wire and whatever. And 30 of those subjects were hard grounded to the earth, and 30 of them were placebo grounded. And we were just looking at sleep, and if you feel better, And we didn't know what we were doing because everybody said, well, you have to have more information. In order for anybody to believe this, you have to have a dozen studies or whatever. We've since done over 30, But when we got the results back, everybody started talking about all the benefits that they had, like TMJ would disappear.
What's TMJ?
TMJ, it's when you have
Skin disease?
A jaw.
Oh.
A jaw, clenched.
Oh, grinding.
Grinding, yeah.
Got it.
Arthritis disappeared. Some people, their vision improved. Everybody, their skin color looked good. Just within...
They were solid. They were good.
It was just... Some people, you wouldn't even recognize them because this was a study that went on for 6-8 weeks. And you would see them and you meet them at the door and this is not the person I grounded, or whatever. All of a sudden, we had people telling us that not only did pain go away and that they slept better, but the most common thing I heard from women, I got my life back.
Interesting.
I got my life back. Meaning, when you're in pain, you do not have a life.
No, of course not. No. Everything's about pain.
And if you have a degenerative health disorder,
it's all about that.
Your life is about docs and scripts and visits, and your whole life changes. We learned that this was like, wow, this doesn't just affect pain and sleep. It affects almost everything in the body. So then I ended up going down to San Diego, and I met a anesthesiologist, medical doc, who took an interest in what I was doing. And he said, I don't think there's anything to what you're doing. But he said, we've got to, if you want to put up the time and the money, we'll do a study and
we'll see what happens.
His concept was, I'll prove that you're wrong. But it wasn't about proof because it didn't make any sense to anyone.
Right.
And so anyhow, after we grounded like a dozen women for, I believe, 6 weeks. A dozen women for like 6 weeks, and then we measured cortisol. So we would take these saliva type things, and we'd get them to swab them, and then we would do heart rate, do various things on them. But anyhow, it was really to measure cortisol. And we measured their cortisol every 4 hours for 24 hours. Then we grounded them for 6-8 weeks. And then we went back, a nurse went back and did the cortisol saliva again. And then they sent those to the lab. They froze them, sent them to the lab immediately. And afterwards, when we got the results, everybody was shocked because before everybody's circadian cortisol, 24-hour profile of cortisol, was like spaghetti. You put them all together and it looked like a bowl of spaghetti. They were all over the place. And when we grounded them, the ones who, they were hard grounded, and we looked at theirs 6-8 weeks later, and theirs was all in a uniform profile. These women did not know each other. They were different parts of the San Diego area. And, so the cortisol would start out around, very low at like
5, let's say.
At midnight.
Sure.
And it would go along like this, and then at 4 a.m., it would begin to spike. And then it would be very high, and then it would drift down throughout
the night.
The next until the 20. So you had a 24-hour profile. So it started near zero, then it went all the way up, and at 4 a.m. and then it drifted down all day. And at midnight, or around 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, it started to drop off. And then, and so, what we learned from that study is, one, if you're not sleeping well, it's because you have elevated cortisol. Cortisol is fight and flight. If you're thinking about something, it's elevating cortisol, and you're not going to sleep.
I think
like having one eye open, like a bear in the woods.
Yeah.
Coyotes in the woods, sitting there.
You're that jackrabbit constantly looking.
It's exactly what it's all. That's how I related to all this, because I had that nature background in all of this.
Sure.
And so anyhow, everybody looked at it and they said, "Wow, this is totally impressive." So what is happening at 4 a.m. that's causing cortisol?
Even in the grounded.
Yeah, these were all grounded.
All grounded. Got it.
All
real
grounded,
not placebo.
Yeah, these were just hard grounded, and they were measuring cortisol in the blood. So anyhow, so what happened at 4 a.m. that everybody's cortisol went up? They didn't know each other, and they weren't living in the same house.
So what happened?
And they were, whatever. And so then I would have probably been one of the only people on the planet that would have been able to figure this out. But because I remembered the Western Union in the old days, and the telephone would only work certain hours of the day, depending on where the sunlight was.
Okay.
It's true. The old Western Union, when it went dark on one side of the mountain, there's no more signal.
That makes sense.
Okay. So anyhow, what's happening is that as the Earth is turning like this, you're fixed to the Earth and you're turning with the Earth. So we have a 24-hour cycle. We have sunlight and we have midnight, darkness. And so anyhow, and so you have these 4, I call them eddies. They're, on the sun side of the Earth, there's 4 eddies of energy. It's created by the sunlight.
Sure.
And it's, the heat. There's no heat coming from the sun. There's only radiation coming from the sun, and it heats up the Earth and energizes, and it creates these electrical, energetic eddies. And in the center of them, like at noon, they would be the highest. So it goes on and on, but it's a natural phenomena. And it's been measured for a couple hundred years, but not by modern science. There's no reason to. And so at 4 a.m., the Earth is at a certain point, and the sun is starting, the energy of the sun from the sun is constant. So it's starting to heat the Earth, and then all of a sudden there's energy moving on the surface of the Earth.
And that's what they were picking.
You're measuring the an increase in the amplitude of Earth's electric field. And it's impacting. So what it meant to me was I was not expecting anything like that. And I rarely ever even talk about it, but it was like, okay, there's something bigger going on here, because we didn't know what we were doing. We were just experimenting, trying to find out what was going on.
Sure.
And so all of a sudden now I recognize that, okay, we're connected to nature. More so than we ever realized.
And its cycles.
Yeah.
And its cycles, which is important.
Yeah, the cycles are extremely important, and you have annual cycles.
Yeah, annual cycles,
seasons, and all these things, and our body is attuned to every one of them.
And that's why, and for people listening, something or watching, something that I think we all can understand is when the moon is full moon, the tides are being pulled back, and as any police department anywhere in the country or the world would say,
Yep.
on a full moon night, there's more calls, there's more craziness because it does mess with us.
Yeah.
So that there are forces in the universe that are pulling on us.
Absolutely. And we used to be in harmony with all of that.
Right.
It was kind of like a
Dance.
an orchestra.
A dance, yeah.
And you're living in harmony with it. I mean, you're dancing to this, to these rhythms, and you see it in the natural world. I mean, it's just all over.
It's the beauty and the perfection of nature.
Yeah, but when we moved in the house, the only thing we know is the TV screens or the cell screens. But anyhow, so anyhow, we learned that. Okay, there's a profound effect. So that led to more studies, and everybody started getting excited, and we ended up doing like 20 peer-reviewed published studies. Maybe it's up to around 30 now. We have some really nice ones coming out in the next year, maybe, and on ATP and the production of. Mitochondria, how all that works, and what happens when you reduce the inflammation in the body, then it increases ATP and so on. So it has to do with that. That explains the energy that these women are reporting. Got my life back, got my energy back. So anyhow, we ended up doing study after study, and then along the way, the guys come along and say, "Oh my God, we got to get this to market." Because we're all going to get rich or whatever. And I wanted nothing to do with a business. I was pretty much retired. I wanted to do the research. I was so infatuated with all of this. I thought, oh my God, this is what life's all about. The problem was when you discover something and one day you wake up and you realize, oh, wow, this is the most exciting thing I've ever experienced. And then all of a sudden you realize nobody knows anything about it. Nobody's ever heard of it, and they all think you're nuts. Then all of a sudden, so you have the best day of your life and the worst day of your life all in the same day.
Yep.
And so I have for 25 years, one by one, sometimes as many as 100, sometimes as many as 1,000, sometimes the largest group was like 1,500 people that I've grounded for up to 3 days at a time at conventions and things like that. And so my whole life and mission has been, you can't explain this. It's not believable. Nobody alive today can believe this or make any sense of this except for a handful of old timers. And so they have to experience it. If I ground a woman, she can feel it because women have thinner skin than men do. And they're more sensitive. They're more they're sensitive to everything, and especially to the children. And they're just different people than we are.
Yes, they are.
So anyhow, they're more. So they feel grounding. They feel earthing. You put a woman
Faster than a man?
Oh yeah, because men's got to think about it.
That's very
If
true.
this were true, I'd know about it.
Well, yeah, we're much more on most men are more logical in the mind sense, and women are much more connected to the earth, connected to to the energies and the feeling of it all.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Women has to feel it.
Yeah, I've been around women my entire life. I know.
No, they can feel what's out here. They can feel
more
you.
sensitive. They're more sensitive.
Yeah, they can
to that stuff.
feel
Absolutely.
everything. I mean, feeling is they're much more dependent on it. Because of the children, because of the family, because of everything that goes on in life. And men are, go fight the bear and bring home the bacon.
Right. I have never tried bear bacon, but I hear it's good.
If there were a bear around, you wouldn't have the bacon. You'd
No,
have it.
sir, you just run as best you can.
So anyhow, we ended up doing all these studies and putting together a body of evidence to help people understand what this was.
Right.
But what I learned along the way, the only way I can ever really convince anybody, they have to experience it. So earthing is an experiential thing. I can talk about it all day long, but until I get your feet on the earth or until I get your feet on a mat that's connected to the earth, you're not going to accept it.
Now with this, all the stuff that we've been talking about, Clint, there's two ways of doing this, to my understanding. One is a free way, which is essentially taking your shoes off and spending more time on your grass outside, on your lawn, in nature, but connecting your physical body with nothing in between to the earth.
That's right.
Correct. That's the free version.
Yes.
And there's a lot of benefits to that. Just even going out into your backyard and lying there or hanging out and reading a book, there is a connection there.
Yes.
And then the other way is through grounding products or earthing products, where you can connect to a mat. Because every house, and I'm kind of breaking it down for everybody, every house has to be grounded, generally speaking. So most houses.
Yes.
So every plug that's in a socket, every socket in the wall that's connected to,
It's connected to the earth ground.
it's grounded because of lightning storms and other reasons like that. So you can, in your home, connect to the plug and be grounded.
Yeah, you have
safely.
an earthing port, yes.
You have an earthing port, if you will.
Ground port.
So, and then you've created a company, which you didn't want to create, but you did. But it's done a tremendous amount of good for the people in the world, because your products are actually good quality. There's a lot of knockoff products. There's not a lot of people who jumped into the space because they saw dollar signs. But your mission is very different than those.
Yeah, I have to tell you how the company came into being. It'll only take a second here.
Sure.
But when we were doing our original studies, we had to make these ground planes. Mm-hmm. And a ground plane to me is you're connecting something to the earth with a wire or whatever, and you have a plane or you have a mat or whatever we want to call it. So in order to do our studies, we had to build these ground planes. And sometimes we would use electrode patches because of just different things. And then, but as time went on, everybody who was in our studies that were the subjects that were actually grounded, they all wanted to take the mats home with them because
They slept better.
they knew what they experienced.
Sure.
And some of it was just a half hour of grounding. And a lot of our studies were very short because it's so fast.
Right.
I mean, it's going to reduce inflammation. It's going to put the fire out in minutes. And then the healing, that may take a little longer, but it'll stop the inflammation rather quickly.
Right. It takes away the thing that's agitating the situation, allowing the body to then heal.
Yeah, it reconnects the ground, your ground source, so that it stops the inflammation.
But by stopping the inflammation, it allows the body to do what it's naturally built to do.
Yeah, it just
heal.
lets the body do what it normally does.
Because if not, and just so people understand, when you have inflammation, the body's constantly dealing with the inflammation, trying to put it out, trying to deal with it.
That's why you don't have a life.
Correct. So it's always trying to figure things out. You pull the inflammation out, then it goes, oh, there's the damage. Let me go fix it. But while the inflammation's there, it's got to deal with the fire before it starts to rebuild the house.
That's the problem. Yeah, he's sitting there building the fire. But anyhow, these ladies that were grounded, or the guys, we ended up mostly with women because they were the ones who responded, and they were the easiest to get to participate in studies and so on. All of a sudden, these women started wanting these pads that were the grounded subjects. And then as time went on, some of them started coming back and they would want another pad. Well, we didn't have them because we made them up as we were going, on the studies. And then one day we recognized, because there were so many people wanting these mats, and we would tell them what to do, tell them,
how to build it. Yeah.
And if this weren't free, if this weren't something that you could go outdoors and do for free, I would not be sitting here. Mm-hmm. I didn't start this out as a business to go make money.
Right.
I did this because it was so important, because it profoundly affected my health and everybody's health that I was able to play with. And finally, we said, okay, we have to do something because we can't be bothered with this and do our studies. We have to. So we sat down one day and we said, what is the number one thing we can do to give these people something they can take home, but not expect them to have to do anything? Because we knew from getting people to comply ain't going to happen. They'll do something for 3 or 4 days and then they'll drop off and they'll never do it again. And so we just said, okay, let's make a sleep mat, because we were playing with some sleeping study then. So let's make a mat they can put on their bed, connected to the earth, and then all they have to do is put it on the bed one time. Then after that, just put the sheet over the top of it, then go home and go to bed. Like you don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. It's just do what you normally do. no work, no cost, no ongoing anything. And then by connecting to the earth, puts the fire out, and that allows the immune system to return the body to normal, which it does. I don't care whether you got I don't care what you got. The immune system only knows one thing: return the body to normal. You just have to get grounded and stay grounded like you were throughout time. But this modern world, we're paying a high price.
I was going to ask you about something in regards to, and I'm not. This is a bit about grounding, but also, I've heard so much about the electrical waves that come off of electrical devices. And I forgot what that kind of electricity in the air is called. What is it called? The UV or EV or?
Well, you're talking about EMF.
EMF. Thank you. That was the word. Yeah, EMF signals. When you're grounded, is that help? And is there anything that you could do to kind of deal with the EMF signals, like from the phone, from the television, things like that?
The reason you ground everything in this studio is to get rid of, the 60 hertz noise, or especially in the medical world.
Yeah.
Everything in a hospital is grounded and shielded. Cable TV systems are shielded in order to block out all of this noise, but they have to be, but anyhow, so when you put your bare feet on the earth, the earth has this electrical surface charge. When you put your feet on, your body absorbs that, and it's negative. So now any EMF or static charge in the environment, or any kind of an electrical, normal electrical thing that would be in the household or that would be in a normal environment. So now you are electrically one and the same as the earth, as big as the earth. So there's no charge out there that can perturb the earth. A lightning strike will perturb the earth, and it'll ricochet back and forth and go around and whatever until it dissipates. But the point is, as long as you're connected to the earth, then you are shielded from all of these environmental electrical noises. It doesn't matter what they are. The EMFs are very minor. If EMFs were the thing that killed people, we would all be dead, and there would be you would go to the morgue and there would be people who died from EMF. There is no such thing. That's just a bunch of guys running around with meters that are all crazy about, making a living, charging $1,000, $2,000 to come into your home and tell you that your lamps are radiating electric fields. Gotcha. Well, everything radiates an electric field. This body, this heart, everything radiates electric fields, and they're all and they all perturb each other. So anything that's out there, like the average voltage on a static charge, and you're getting up off the couch, is a few thousand volts. An EMF is maybe a couple of volts, But there's electromagnetism and all of this noise and all of these issues that are out there. Nobody really understands it. Nobody's really educated. They have a voltmeter and say, "Oh my God, an EMF moves the meter." Yes, it moves the meter. Everything moves the meter. You just have to have the right meter. But the bigger problem out there for everybody is these static charges that are created from all of the fabrics and the dissimilar fabrics, and then wearing the shoes, and you're holding these charges on your body. So your body is forever charged. So as soon as you ground your body, you can feel that charge dissipate. You can feel that, but it's like the question you're asking: is the EMF going to harm anybody?
Yeah, and if it does, it's grounding help with that.
There are lots of guys. There are hundreds of guys out there, even doctors, that are going out there and say, "Oh my God, you can't do this because the EMFs will go through you," and they have no background in electromagnetism. They do not understand hardly any of this. It's just a voltmeter, and oh my God, they use it to go scare women to get them to pay money to
buy a product,
to buy their services, or to come in and rewire their lamps or whatever. It's really, I don't have anything very friendly to say about it because I have too much background in
Fair enough.
electromagnetism.
Well, thank you for clearing that up because I had really little understanding of it.
And they will, if you mention, I try not to even mention them ever because they are rabid. I mean, they come after me like the coyote coming after the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just try to not give it any airtime or voice because it doesn't serve anyone.
Got it.
Other than it upsets a lot of people because somebody thinks differently than
I know that with this show. Trust me, I know that with this show.
I don't really care what anybody does out there, and I just don't. I mean, they all attack earthing and grounding because, oh my God, because they made a living. And here's one of the problems that happened. Is before I got involved in this, the people that were involved in the electric fields and all of that stuff, they were about magnetic fields.
Not electrical.
Not electric. And it was because of the canisters that were on somebody's home in Denver, Colorado, and a child had leukemia, and so all of a sudden this woman was very good at energizing even the NIH and everybody else. And they went out and did, spent hundreds of millions, or not, maybe tens of millions of dollars doing research on electric fields. And they ended up, after 10, 15 years of all this research, that there is a slight chance that the childhood leukemia could be caused from electric fields.
Or like being next to a tower, electrical tower.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so anyhow, there was no definitive, this is the cause of childhood leukemia. But anyhow, that's the story. So anyhow, I was doing the original earthing study, and some of these people had found out what I was doing, and they invited me to a meeting in San Diego, and they wanted me to come and explain what grounding and all of this stuff to them. And I was sitting there in their meetings listening to them, and they were talking about how you have to eliminate magnetic fields, you have to do ABC, whatever, put it, fancy shielding, fancy...
Tinfoil hats.
No, yeah, well...
I'm joking.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what a lot of them promote, And I mean, things like that. But anyhow, you had to use a certain type of mule metal and various things in order to block these magnetic fields. Well, most people, there's not a chance you could afford to block the magnetic fields because the magnetic fields go from here to Mars and back, I mean, the Van Allen belts,
of course,
everything that's magnetic. It will go through brick.
Oh, easily.
It will go through anything. So magnetic fields, what are you doing out here trying to,
protect yourself?
I said, it's electric fields that are the active component.
Right.
Magnetic fields are constant, and electricity has to be running in for them to exist. But the electric field, the minute you go in and you turn on energize your home with the power switch, then the electric fields are going to go throughout the circuit, and they're going to sit there until you flip a switch or whatever, and then they're going to go to the lamp or the toaster or whatever. So the electric field is constant. And so they got really upset with me. And then I said, what you do there is kind of like we do in the communications industry or any other medical industry or anything. You ground and shield everything, the cables, everything, to prevent interference. And I said, if you really want to protect the human body, then what you have to do is you have to ground it because the skin acts as kind of a Faraday cage. And when it's connected to the earth, it's one and the same electrically as the earth, and the electric fields can't penetrate and go into the body, through the body. That's all nonsense. That is absolute nonsense, what they have been proposing out there for years. And, it's now they come out and this is grounding, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And you cannot educate them.
Right, because
I have tried for 25 years. And finally I said, this is not, what I'm interested in is reconnecting the human body to the earth so it can equalize and maintain Earth potential, the same amount of electrons as the Earth has, so that the immune system can function like it normally does by producing radicals that oxidize pathogen, and any remnants left over from those radicals can automatically, instantly be, at the speed of light, be instantly neutralized by Earth's primal antioxidants.
Wow, Clint, this is such a fascinating conversation, and I appreciate you going deep down the rabbit hole with
that
me,
one's down,
or the jackrabbit hole.
And that one will get a lot of people upset. And I don't mean to upset anybody. I don't really care what these people do.
Right, I understand, and it's the point is that what you're proposing. There's always people don't like the things we talk about on the show sometimes. It's just the way it is.
That's just
that's human beings.
Yeah,
that's
leave
period.
me alone. Go
but just on a logical standpoint, if you heard this from the first time you're hearing both these concepts, being closer to nature, being connected to the earth, these are very basic things. I'm not asking you to put a tinfoil hat on. I'm not asking you to shield yourself in plastic bubbles with metal on you. Like this is very basic.
This is natural nature.
Walk around on barefoot on grass.
We did for millions and billions of years.
It's very basic stuff. So if other people have other concepts or other ideas, that's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. But this is just what you're proposing, and this is what you have scientific studies, peer-reviewed studies about. So that's all. But I wanted to ask you. I'm going to ask you a few rapid-fire questions, Clint.
Okay, I want to finish your story about the blue people.
Yes, please.
So anyhow, I was going along doing all this research, doing all these studies, building these ground planes, and then all of a sudden, one day, I had the dream, and along the way, there's some of the earlier dreams, I could see pain in people's eyes, these women's eyes. That was what really got my attention towards the end. But they were all experiencing pain, grimacing type pain. Mm-hmm. And then I kept doing what I was doing because that was something that happened here and there or whatever. And I had no connection to my life or anything I knew about. And then anyhow, but I kept going on this grounding, and I kept going and going and going. And then all of a sudden, there's a little more to the story, but all of a sudden one night I had this very vivid dream. And here was this woman who was laying there on the pillow, sleeping peacefully. And that's when I connected the dots and realized that all of this, everything I had done in the last 25 years,
right?
It was not anything came out of my brain other than I had a background in electrical phenomena, grounding and stabilizing an electrical environment,
right,
and preventing static charges like we have in our homes and stuff, and just preventing that in your environment or medical environment, whatever. Mm-hmm. And but it just like a light bulb went off, and I finally realized that this whole thing in the background was pushing me or pulling me or whatever. Somebody, because anything I ever wanted along the way, anything I ever wanted showed up. It didn't show up before I needed it. It didn't show up after I needed it. It showed up right on time. The researchers, the doctor, everybody who was involved, and there's a lot of people involved with this over the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. Every one of them showed up with the right message or the right talent or the right whatever at the right time to move this project forward. I'm kind of an introvert. I mean, you're not going to see me out there. That's, it's like Olivia on the book. So I would never have done that. That's not me. Right. I knew it needed to be done.
Yeah,
and
I know the feeling.
And I supported her to get it done.
Yeah,
but that's not me to go do this. It's not me to produce an earthing movie. It's not me to produce the earthing book. All these people who helped write the book, Stephen Sinatra, everybody who came along on time, played their part, and most of them left, and half of them, are
doing other things.
Yeah,
it's fascinating, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started the conversation. Is that you and I are both conduits for whatever is coming through us, because just like your story and my story, it doesn't make sense from where we came from.
It's not believable.
It doesn't. If you would write this into a movie, you'd be like, this doesn't make sense. Mm. But as you start to look back, you go, oh, it makes all the sense in the world. That's all my background in the film industry, doing what I'm doing with Next Level Soul TV and the content that we're creating. You and your in communications and electronics, doing what you're doing. Of course, you can see,
Right.
but it didn't make sense.
Didn't make any sense.
Didn't make any sense.
And then
at all.
this background of the Native American and
Oh
the
yeah, all
visions,
the whole thing.
all that stuff, it just all unfolded one day. Like, oh my goodness.
It's
And
all
so
yeah. And look, and the same thing happened to me when I was, I would be, in Hollywood trying to get a movie made, and I kept, getting into the room with the big celebrities or the big producers and the, $1 billion this or that, and I would always just, oh no, oh no, it didn't, constantly, and I would go, why?
Right.
Why? I'm good enough to get in the room. Why can't I get this thing? And now looking back, I wasn't supposed to. I needed to stay outside of the system to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Exactly.
Same for you.
Yeah, I'm totally outside the box.
Same.
There's no box. The box is out in the the rabbit patch.
Exactly. So Clint, I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests, kind of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Well, to me, I've been blessed because I've never really worked for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I've never worked for money, let's say. I mean, I would like to have it and sometimes need more, sometimes have too much and draw us the wrong people, whatever. But money is never, so what's important to me is to be able to get up in the morning and what's on my brain, I can go spend all day or do whatever feels in here. I'm not going to go out and do anything unless it feels right in here. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. If you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Clint, what advice would you give him?
The first thing I remember little Clint was asking the question, how does the grass know to grow?
Little Clint was deep.
Yeah. And I would take, like a little stick and pick an ant up and watch the ant and look at the ant and say, how does he know to be? How does he, what is this all about?
How do they build this? How do they build that little ant pile and all that?
Yeah, and then just his nature, it was just, and then with the Native Americans, my best friends growing up and they lived in this ethereal world. I mean, they don't live in the world that you or I know. Mm-hmm. They don't understand ownership. They don't understand any, different today, but back then it was all.
They were much more connected.
Yeah, it was a magical world. I mean, it was real, but you had to be there and be a part of it. You couldn't accept it a little bit. But anyhow, so I would.
What would you tell little Clint?
I would say stay the course.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Stay the course.
How do you define God or source? God
or source is, I love that one. I grew up in a very religious environment, and I don't remember, but I kind of escaped that belief system. Mm-hmm. And they're all belief systems. That's one thing I learned is everybody's right.
Exactly.
Something is wrong here.
They're just stories.
Yeah, they're just stories.
It's what story you believe in, but they're all stories.
Yeah, but they're all. Joseph Campbell was somebody I just totally
love. Joseph.
I mean, he was one of the people that I guess would be my idol. I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And
great philosopher. Oh.
Yeah, but and he understood the world, the Native American world and those indigenous cultures, and I could connect to all of that, and it was just very real to me, and I every word. But anyhow, Joseph he's the one who helped me more than anybody. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I learned from early on, Native American, that everything is connected. Everything is one thing. Mm-hmm. We're all, if you look at the Earth from space, here's Earth, and here's everything that's going on there and whatever, and we're all doing whatever, but it's all one little thing, It's
a globe, yeah.
Yeah, a microcosm in the universe. And, but anyhow, and we're all energy, we're all electrical in nature. Mm-hmm. And and we're all connected electrically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I are coupled up right now. Our energy fields are coupled up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, everybody that we interact with, we're all. But anyhow, so it's synergy amongst all of us. I think that I'm not sure how to say this, but there is a God, but that God is us, that God is me, that God is you. I mean,
Of course.
because we all create this
Mm-hmm.
in harmony with each other. And we have from the beginning of time, and we will long past our time. But we are all forever molding and creating, and
Changing.
it's not made in 7 days, it's made in whatever. I mean, we all make it up every day.
I love that answer. I love that answer.
And we all are each other.
Beautiful.
I can look at you and I know what's going on in you and what's going on in everybody. We're all doing the same thing,
Yep.
trying to find out who we are, trying to make our little world a little better place, or contributing to the bigger world, or whatever it is. I mean, we're all, it's synergy. It's the energy that connects us all together.
Mm-hmm.
That is God.
Beautiful answer. And finally, what is the ultimate purpose of life?
For all my life, I've always felt I had to have purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I learned most of all early on, and I didn't have a big education or anything. I had very little education other than real life, and because that's the way it was back in those days.
Sure.
But I wanted to learn. And then what I wanted to learn, and then once I learned something or mastered it, experienced it or incorporated it into my being, and I, was authentic, I guess is the word. Then I wanted to be able to help other people to share, to be a contributor. I didn't want to take from. I've given away most anything I've ever made. But it's not about taking. I know that when I die, I'm not going to take anything from this earth.
There's no U-Haul attached to the hearse.
So it's internal. It's what's in here. And I had a near-death experience when I was around 50, and I knew that death was real. I didn't know it was real before then.
That death was real? Or that the other side was real?
No, the death was real.
Okay.
That I'm not going to be here forever.
Oh, you got a wake-up call.
Yeah, I had a wake-up call.
Yeah, because as you're going through this whole little journey, you don't even think about the day that you're not going to be here anymore, because I think that's a defense mechanism that we humans have.
Yes, we've created that.
To handle what's going to happen, because we all, every one of us, except the vampires in the audience, are going to eventually die. It's part of the circle of existence.
It's like there's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow. What there is us right now creating.
Co-creating. Yes.
This experience.
Beautifully said, my friend. Where can people find out more about you? Pick up the book, The Mother Earth Effect, and the book Earthing, and get real earthing products if they're interested.
The Earthing book, which there's I don't know how many copies, published in 23 different languages.
Sure.
Now, and it's we were well over 1 million many years ago, so I don't know
how many books have sold.
How many have been in circulation or anything. But anyhow, it's never been really promoted. It's one of those things that is people get it and read it and pass it along, or get more of them and pass them out and whatever. And but anyhow, the Earthing book is a good place if you're a reader. It's a good resource to capture the essence of this.
And it's on Amazon, obviously, and anywhere books
it's
are
on
sold.
Amazon or whatever. And I think we pass them out with some of the products we send out too. But anyhow, so the Earthing, the little down to earth, the little 15-minute video that's been seen by a few 100 million people over the last since 2017, I think.
Yeah, it's playing on Next Level Soul TV as well.
And it's just never been, it's been, everybody and their brother has copied it and put it in different languages and different whatever. And we have no idea how many, whatever. But anyhow, it's a 15-minute video that really allows you to get it.
Okay.
And we were totally surprised when we released it. And like 90 days later, there's near 100 million views or something.
It went viral because it's something that, it's obviously something that the world is needing.
Yeah, it just like...
And I'll have a link in the show notes and the video description as well on YouTube for links to the products and stuff like that. So,
right.
And Clint, do you have any parting messages for the audience?
Any
parting messages for the audience?
Yeah. Well, anyhow, the Earthing movie on YouTube, or however you want to deal that.
Sure.
But that kind of stuff, the parting shot is, no matter how this sounds to anybody, you have an obligation to yourself, because if you don't have health, your life is going to be about
the disease,
unhealth.
Yeah, unhealth. Yeah, exactly.
And unhealth is not very pleasant.
Right.
And I'll be 81 in July. Mm-hmm. I can get up, move around. I can walk. I can run. I can walk the dog. Sure, I have pain. Anybody, and I've had pain my whole life. But after I started getting grounded, after I learned about grounding for myself, within just a few months, I had totally, things that I thought I was going to go to my grave with have disappeared. And but the main thing is, if you have pain in your body, you have inflammation. If you want to know what inflammation is, you can Google it, or you can or take whatever disease or whatever list of diseases you have and type each one with inflammation, and you'll learn that they're all related to inflammation. Inflammation does not exist in the natural world. Mm-hmm. Inflammation only exists in our modern world. So we have to find a way. The future is about, for me, it's about education, teaching what I've learned and sharing with it. But for everybody else, the world has to first of all, continue to learn about this and do more studies. And if those are needed, what's really needed is people need to experience it. But we need to incorporate the natural world into our modern world, meaning that if grounding is what maintains our immune systems electrically stable, mm-hmm. Your immune system is 100% electrical. Mm-hmm. If you want to maintain the immune system and eliminate autoimmune disorder, which is what the underlying cause of all these modern health disorders is, mm-hmm. then we have to connect ourselves. We have to bring the earth energy into our living environments, modernize them. So, and again, you can edit this down, but it's about the futures. Like right now, we have AI, and everything in the world is changing very rapidly. Mm-hmm. And based on what I've seen in my 80 years, I'm telling you, you haven't seen anything yet, because now it's doubling every
15 minutes.
Yeah, every 15 minutes. But anyhow, so there's good and bad, whatever. It's all about information, getting information to all the people all the time. This is a mission that's been running through time from the printing press on. And it's about sharing information, education, mm-hmm. and anyhow, so that's, but the main thing here that has to be done is people have to learn about this, not the crazy people running around out there selling this, that, whatever. It's about, we need to incorporate grounding into our lifestyles, but not, right now we're using mats, mm-hmm. or sleep mats, or mm-hmm. or whatever it takes, or patches for acute inflammation and so on. But you have to have grounded carpets. Mm-hmm. You have to have grounded
floors,
fabrics, so that when they make a sofa, a mattress, or anything, so that everything is subtly connected to the earth in order to maintain the electrical phenomena of the natural earth, of which we are part, mm-hmm. and to stabilize the the electrical phenomena of the body, to stabilize the immune system, to stop it from misfiring or not. It's not misfiring. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It just lost its ground, but it doesn't know it lost its ground.
Sure.
And right now we're sold, well, do this, take that, whatever. That is not the answer. You have, the body it knows what to do. You do not know what to do. Your body knows what to do. All you have to do is, if you have pain in your body or health disorder, then you have to remove what's interfering with your immune system so that the body can return itself to normal. It's the stress of life that you're putting. It's not nature. It's not natural. It's our environments. We have to change our environments. We have to bring nature in electrically, this invisible shield that is naturally there, that we've always had. We have to reincorporate that into our living environments, modernize our living, electrically modernize our, and get rid of the static electricity, whatever it is, any kind of electrical phenomena that's perturbing or interfering with the immune system. And most especially, you have to restore ground, because if you don't have ground, you don't have a safe environment.
Clint, I want to first of all honor you for the work that you've done all these years to get this information out in the world. I appreciate you so much for helping not only awaken this planet, but heal this planet and heal everybody on it.
Yeah, that's what it's really about.
But I appreciate you, my friend, and thank you again for everything you're doing.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.